Where is the peace? When will we have peace? Maybe you've already asked yourself this question. Maybe not for the world, but for your life. When will I have peace? When will my life have peace? We are witnessing a very cruel event, a war that is happening between Palestine and Israel, more precisely, Hamas and Israel. But have you ever wondered when this war started? Have you ever wondered what the origin of this war is? This war didn't start now. And what gave rise to this war? Back in Genesis, chapter 15, Abram was in dialogue with God, and there he was forming a covenant with God himself. And in chapter 15, in verse number 1, it says, "After these things, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision. Don't be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Great will be your reward." But Abram asked, "O sovereign Lord, what will you give me if I remain childless and my heir is Eliezer of Damascus?" And he added, "You didn't give me any children. A servant from my house will be my heir." Then the Lord gave him the following answer. "His heir will not be that. A son begotten by yourself will be your heir." So here the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said it will not be a servant, but a son begotten by yourself who will be your heir, and here the Lord was referring to who? To the son of promise, who would be Isaac. Further on, in chapter 16, we find Sarai, Abram's wife. And she says to him, "Look, since the Lord has prevented me from having children, sleep with my Egyptian servant, Hagar, and I can make a family with you through her." However, this was not what the Lord wanted. God's promise to Abram was Isaac. However, in verse 4 of chapter 16 it says, "So he possessed Hagar and she became pregnant." And what would be the result of this pregnancy? Ishmael. Not Isaac, but Ishmael. Because Abraham listened to Sarah and forgot what God spoke to him, Abraham experienced silence. He tasted God's silence for 13 years. And then the Lord spoke to Abraham again, promising him his son, who would be Isaac. And then, in chapter number 21, Isaac, the son of promise, is born. However, in verse 8, it says, "The boy grew up and was weaned." On the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham threw a big party. Sarah, however, saw that the son who grabbed the Egyptian woman had given to Abraham and was laughing at Isaac. Abraham said, "Get rid of that slave and her son, because he will never be an heir with my son Isaac." And this disturbed Abraham even more, as it involved his son. But God said to him, "Do not be troubled because of this slave boy. Fulfill everything that Sarah asks of you, because it will be through Isaac that your descendants will be considered. But I will also make a nation out of the son of the slave, for he is her descendant." These people who live in Palestine today are the descendants of Ishmael, the son Abraham had with Hagar, an Egyptian slave. See that Abraham was not supposed to lie with Hagar and have Ishmael, but because he listened to Sarah and forgot what God promised him, he generated Ishmael, and from Ishmael the descendants that today live in Palestine. And just as, in a way, there was a conflict between Ishmael and Isaac, today we see the conflict between Palestine and Israel, Hamas and Israel. Look where it all started. Back there thousands and thousands of years ago, because of a wrong attitude that Abraham had, thousands and thousands of years passed, and these two people, constantly at odds, constantly in tension, constantly at war. What I want to bring you here today is not an in-depth look at this story. In fact, if you want to delve deeper into the story of Ishmael and Isaac, put it in the comments and I can provide a more in-depth study on this. But what I want to draw your attention to today is to listen to the voice of God and only the voice of God. Do you know why? Because at that moment, Abraham should not have listened to Sarah. He should have trusted the promise and maintained his relationship only with Sarah, as Isaac would come from there. For Abraham, there was the consequence of God's silence. And how many times by listening to the people around you, how many times by listening to your friends, often to your family, are you proving the silence of God? Because God, He says something to you, however, your friend, your uncle, your father comes to you and says something else. And you would rather listen to what a person told you than what God Himself told you. How many times do you open the Word and come across a direction from God, but you prefer to listen to what someone else says? How many times has God told you that He was going to make a change in your life? But you listen more to those who said that your life would never change, that you would never change, that nothing would improve and nothing would work out for you. And then you experience God's silence because He doesn't transform your life, because you aren't listening to Him. And there is no way you can believe if you are not listening to the voice of God. Abraham disconnected for a moment, and that was enough for him to take a wrong attitude, go through God's silence, and give rise to a series of conflicts and more conflicts that would last for thousands and thousands of years until today. Look how serious this is. Look how important it is to listen to what God is saying to us. One attitude generated everything we are seeing happen between Israel and Palestine. And perhaps the attitude of not listening to God's voice is generating many bad things in your life. It's creating a marriage that doesn't change. It is creating a family that is losing more and more every day. Is it generating a life of loneliness, sadness, anguish, bitterness? A life of scarcity, and all because of an attitude. One attitude can be all you need to completely change your life, or to destroy it. One attitude can be enough for God to come and transform your entire life, your home, your interior, or it can be enough to prevent God from performing the miracle in your life. So from today onwards you start listening only to what God says. Because your friends don't know more than God. Your family knows no more than God. They do not know. It is also written that the final answer comes from the mouth of God. So dear, if God is speaking to you, just listen to God's voice. Don't listen to third parties. Because if you listen to the wrong people, you will take the wrong actions. And if you take the wrong actions, could the history of Israel and the history of Palestine have been different? Clear. But because of a wrong attitude, which was generated by not listening exclusively to the voice of God, we are seeing all this cruelty happen. So, what do you think about this? Who am I listening to? Analysis. Who are you listening to? Is it God's promise? Is this what God spoke to you? Or is it a third party? That friend, that loved one? May this message enter the depths of your being, the depths of your soul, and will lead you to reflection and a sudden change of direction. Listen only to the voice of God, because it is the voice of God that will guide you, that will lead you, that will direct you, and lead you to have God's answer, to have the change in your life, the change in your home, or perhaps the healing you need, the liberation you need. The secret is to listen exclusively to the voice of God. And if this message spoke to you, put it in the comments. Leave your testimonial here in the comments so that it can help other people who may be going through the same thing as you. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any messages of faith. God bless you.